Before we can know why everything is as it is, before we can know how it all will end, we need to understand.
Silo Season 3 Episode 1 trailer just dropped. After spending most of the season alongside Solo and the children in Silo 17, Juliet finally made her way back to Silo 18, only to collide with Bernard, who was utterly unraveled after learning the truth about the safeguard. The two ended up sealed inside the airlock, a chamber that uses fire to decontaminate and sterilize anyone returning from outside. Their fate hung in the balance, and then in its final moments, the finale cut to a flashback of what I'll call the before times. Scenes set in a world that looks unmistakably like our own, implying they take place long before the silos existed. There we meet two brand new characters, a congressman named Daniel and a journalist named Helen, sharing drinks in a Washington D.C. bar. On the surface, they're an enigma, but the sight of Daniel handing Helen the very same Pez dispenser that later turns up in Silo 18 quietly stitches the two timelines together. Introducing these figures from the past sets up a new season poised to weigh answers about the silo's origins against the shifting realities of the present. Namely, what happened to the world above ground, and how humanity ended up buried beneath it in the first place. As the show's defining mystery, that's a genuinely exciting direction, especially for viewers who felt Season 2 dragged. There's a real sense the show could start to feel like something entirely different. And while I was looking forward to exactly that shift, I struggled with the Season 3 premiere, and couldn't immediately pin down why. Having followed the show since its debut, read the source novels, and paid close attention to every trailer and promotional beat, I wasn't left with many surprises. I already knew Juliet would wake up back in Silo 18 with no memory of what happened when she went outside, or of her time in Silo 17. I knew the timelines would split, so the show could begin answering how humanity ended up in the silos to begin with. And I knew that would double the amount of table setting and character introductions required for the before time storyline. All of that played a role. But honestly, it's also just the ordinary friction of a season premiere, layered with the shifts I'd already anticipated. What actually threw me came into focus on a second viewing, right from the opening line. Juliet's nurse handing her pills saying, "Here's your vitamins." Something about it landed as an obvious lie from the very first moment, and that feeling never really lets up. To be fair, the opening sequence is quietly gorgeous. I especially loved how the score underlines the shift in Rebecca Ferguson's portrayal of Juliet, and the shot that frames her through a mirror from within. A subtle nod to the hidden cameras that reminds us nothing here is quite what it seems. We land back in Silo 18 3 months after Juliet came sprinting over the hill, warning everyone the world outside wasn't safe. At first it looks like simple amnesia, but it's soon revealed her memories are being chemically suppressed, through medication disguised as vitamins. Having gone outside to clean and returned alive, she's earned near-universal adoration inside the silo, adoration that has apparently swept her into the mayor's office. Recall that at the close of last season, once Lucas reached the mysterious door beneath the silo that George had spent so long searching for, everything changed in an instant. One of Season 1's core ideas was how easily people cling to comforting illusions, and how shattering those illusions, as happened when Juliet vanished over the ridge, tends to send people swinging to the opposite extreme, suddenly believing everything they once knew was a lie. Bernard and Lucas both reacted this way when confronted with the safeguard's existence. As its longtime overseer, Bernard had always told himself the terrible things he did served the greater good, a belief that collapsed the moment he learned the voice guiding him could exterminate all of Silo 18 on a whim. After Bernard's own bid to step outside, even briefly, even just to feel free, Camille and Robert Sims entered the vault to consult the algorithm, which chose Camille to succeed him. By the start of Season 3, she's clearly the one in charge, overseeing Juliet's memory suppression regimen while juggling her new duties as mayor. I'll come back to exactly what she's doing to shape Juliet's memories, and how it ties back into that theme of comforting illusion. For now, the drugs seem to be working. Rebecca Ferguson repeatedly nails the portrayal of a Juliet stripped of any memory of Knox and Shirley from Mechanical, or of Sims and Deputy Hank. My favorite instance. Touring the construction site where the stairs are being repaired, she asks, in almost the same tone she once used to ask if she liked mushrooms, whether this was where her father died. Knox gently corrects the record. Dr. Pete Nichols didn't go there planning to sacrifice himself for the rebellion. And when Hank tries to walk her through a deeply traumatic shared experience, she simply cuts him off with "Sorry, who are you?" There's presumably a limit to how many times that beat can land, but it hadn't worn thin by the third or so use in the premiere. A testament to how much time we've spent with these characters, and to a performance that makes this new version of Juliet genuinely compelling against the one we've followed for 2 seasons. The obvious question hanging over all of it, without her memories, is this even still Juliet? That's the show's most interesting thread right now. Sherry, Sarah, whichever it is, seems to have the hardest time accepting Jules in this state, and she's also the most doubtful that Juliet will ever return to who she was, which, for what it's worth, doesn't seem to be what the algorithm or Camille actually want either. I said the medication appears effective, but we do catch glimpses of Juliet's true self breaking through. Hearing the phrase, "we're good in supply," triggers flashes of memory, and a dream in which she recalls being outside with Bernard and fragments of their conversation convinces her something urgently needs doing. When she insists Bernard would know the truth if only she could speak with him, Sims escorts her to the sheriff's station and shows her the outside door, retelling the official account. She and Bernard spent 3 minutes in the airlock's fire chamber. Her suit was insulated and protected her, his wasn't, and the poison got to him. Because of that, they couldn't risk burying him at the farms. The stairs had to be cleared, and it reportedly took 6 porters 6 hours to haul his body down to the incinerator. Bernard can't corroborate any of it, Sims claims, because he watched him burn. Watching this unfold, it's yet another moment where the show feels like it's not playing entirely straight with us. After Sims tells his version, you become fairly convinced Bernard is actually alive somewhere. The show then twists the knife. While Sims is talking to Camille, a flashback reveals him wrapping plastic around Bernard's face to smother him, confirming Bernard did survive the fire, only to be murdered by Robert afterward. It's presented to us as solid fact because Sims is speaking candidly to his wife, but he's still lying to her about how Bernard actually died. So a lot doesn't line up here, which leaves you doubting nearly everything you've just seen. And that seems to be entirely intentional, an attempt to put the audience through the same disorientation Jules herself is experiencing. Whether that gambit pays off will depend on the eventual payoff, but I can't say uncertainty made this one of my favorite episodes of Silo to watch. Where Juliet's experience of memory loss is concerned, though the performance rings true, we see the flashes surface, and she doesn't bother masking them when something comes back to her. After she asks about her escape plan while in the cafeteria, we watch Camille go to considerable lengths to plant a false memory in its place. They tell her she sheltered in a refuge hut until she was strong enough to return, that she found the insulated suit there, and they even produce a computer image of the hut to prove it's a real place she genuinely stayed. Camille reports to the vault that Jules finally seems to have accepted the story as real. The algorithm, however, sounds uneasy. Juliet hasn't had a single genuine memory in 3 months, only what Camille has fed her, yet she's suddenly certain there's something she must do. Camille argues that memory reconstruction is never perfect, but the algorithm cuts her off, insisting this goes beyond anything in the standard playbook. It's a little tiresome having to keep calling this thing the algorithm. Honestly, though I suspect we're meant to keep wondering whether it's a person or a machine on the other end of that voice, and moments like this one nudge you toward person. Either way, the order comes down to double Juliet's dosage, which we later see the nurse carry out at her apartment. Much of the episode is spent watching Camille, and Sims watch Juliet drift through her mayoral duties, recognizing no one. The algorithm's goal appears to be restoring the status quo, and Camille seems willing to go along with it, including the lie Sims told her about Bernard's death, which we're clearly meant to notice, even as the couple otherwise appears to be working in lockstep. There's a brief mention of their son, when Sims tells Juliet he hopes she recovers enough memory to recall pulling a gun on Camille in front of the boy. A reminder that their son remains their real priority, as far as we can tell. Given how things ended with the boy pushing Sims out of the vault after he'd spent so long angling for that very position, It feels inevitable that Camille's new role will strain their marriage, and that tension could be a genuinely good thing for the story. The hope is that this whole exercise in withheld truth ultimately pushes the plot forward. With Juliet kept in the dark and fed both the fabricated refuge hut story and a carefully managed account of Bernard's death, the show creates some emotional distance around her. She just needs to recover her memories of Solo, the kids, and what she learned in Silo 17 about disarming the safeguard. Online, fans voiced frustration with the memory loss storyline once the Season 3 trailer dropped, and Hugh Howey, the novel's author and an executive producer on the show, addressed those concerns in a blog post. He explained that he worked closely with showrunner Graham Yost, referred to in the source as Gramos, to keep the story faithful to its central themes, noting that Wool, the first novel, grew out of the observation that history repeats itself whenever generations fail to learn from what came before. Howey pointed out that even a landmark event like the U.S. Civil War can feel like distant history barely 165 years later. And inside the silo, the Great Rebellion took place less than 150 years ago, which is offered as the reason all knowledge of what preceded it has been lost. That theme of forgetting sits at the heart of the trilogy. Howey reassured fans the memory loss arc isn't there to reset the plot or retread old ground, but to explore the systems that make revolution nearly impossible within the silo. That's what Juliet is up against, he wrote. It's what we are up against. That same thread of pervasive forgetting echoes through the Before Time storyline in Washington, D.C. We meet Congressman Daniel Keene and his sister Charlotte, a naval pilot. The two are clearly close, finishing each other's sentences the moment they're reunited. Charlotte is visibly on edge about an upcoming mission, and pushes Daniel to use his political influence to land a seat on an Iran-focused committee chaired by Senator Thurman, hoping he can learn something worth passing along to Helen, the reporter, implying there's something about this mission she can't discuss openly. You'll recall Helen was already pressing Daniel with questions about Iran. It turns out Charlotte arranged the meeting between the two herself, and when Daniel finally sits down with Senator Thurman, she confirms Iran detonated a dirty bomb in D.C., and that retaliation is coming. He makes his case for a committee seat by citing Charlotte's deployment and her likely involvement in whatever follows. Thurman comes across as a thoroughly no-nonsense politician, with her daughter, introduced as the family's writer, serving as her closest confidant. There are a few references to Daniel's Army background, his engineering training, and a project he worked on in New Orleans. Despite it technically being her job to know who she's meeting, Thurman seems to already know something about his role in that project. It's also made clear the two aren't political allies and wouldn't naturally align. Yet she still helps him, sending her daughter with word that Charlotte's operation is set to fly that very night. The mission ends in catastrophe. Charlotte's squadron flies into some kind of unnatural cloud at 50,000 feet. Their instruments fail, a mysterious residue coats their displays, and the jets go down. Senator Thurman later tells Daniel that while the news is reporting successful strikes on nuclear facilities, Charlotte's plane actually crashed during an operation targeting a mountain facility. Charlotte survives, but after her rescue she's admitted to a specialized clinic for traumatic brain injury. The senator had to pull serious strings to secure her a place at what's described as the best facility of its kind. When Daniel visits, she has no idea who he is. She too asks, "Who are you?" A parallel with Juliet's own arc that spans centuries. You have to appreciate a callback like that. Back in Silo 18, while Juliet works out what she needs to do, a few other developments unfold. A new council made up of level representatives and department heads has been formed, introducing us to Harwood, head of mining. His introduction plays almost like a wink at the long-standing fan complaint that mining shouldn't make sense given how close together the silos sit. He jokes that cave-ins aren't really accidents, and mentions the silo has clearly stood for at least 300 years based on the sheer number of tunnels and shafts it contains. He's frustrated they can't simply dig their way out, because as he puts it, it's forbidden by the pact. We also learn Paul Billings is quietly rewriting parts of that very document, a notable development that might explain the pulley and chair system spotted in the construction area, which would ordinarily be against the rules. Elsewhere, we hear the void beneath the silo where George and Jules used to meet has been sealed off by Walker, who doesn't appear this episode. Carla skips the council meeting too, sending her shadow Orla in her place to represent Supply. Orla informs the mayor that items have gone missing from critical supply stores and may have been stolen. But before she can elaborate, Billings interrupts with news about a new rebel faction calling themselves the Outsiders, a genuinely funny name for a group of people who've never actually been outside. A reminder that the silo really is all these characters have ever known. The group's name hints at their goal. They staged an armed raid on the suit room to steal a helmet, and left behind a banner bearing an image from the infamous Jane Carty cleaning footage, reading "This is the truth. The display is a lie." On seeing it, Camille orders Billings to bring in Patrick Kennedy, though it's clear Billings has no idea where to find him. Security reviews footage of the clash and notices one of the outsiders took a solid hit to the forearm from a raider's baton, meaning she'll likely be walking around with a visible bandage, giving security something concrete to search for. Orla and Harwood also share a tense exchange, rooted in old resentment over her having taken the supply shadow job that once belonged to his daughter, a dynamic the show seems to be setting up further in this newly introduced corner of the silo.